This episode discusses mental health and eating disorders which some people may find distressing. If you're affected by the topics or anything discussed in the episode, please know that there are supports available to you. Please talk to someone you trust, for example friends or family, your GP, and the mental health services phone lines, which will be all linked in the description box below. Don't suffer in silence, reach out for help. You are not alone. Welcome back to the Sideline Live podcast. You can follow us over on Twitter and Instagram at the Sideline Live. We'd love to hear from you. On episode 61, I am delighted to be joined by former Dublin hurling minor keeper Cormac Ryan. In this episode we discuss mental health, eating disorders, the GAA culture, identity and the RTE documentary in which he took part, Unspoken. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Hi Cormac, thanks a million for joining me in the podcast.
Orla, how are things? Good to be here.
Before we get into everything, I like to give the guest a kind of a 30-second elevator pitch intro that they do for themselves.
You should have warned me about this. Right, where do I start? My name's Cormac. I'm a 28-year-old physio from Dublin. Mainly a kind of GAA and cycling background. I would have played minor in 21 with Dublin back in kind of 2010 to 2014-ish. Then kind of accidentally fell into cycling. Cycled around Ireland twice. Recently cycled 5,500 kilometers across Europe, and have kind of accidentally also fell into kind of mental health awareness advocacy, I suppose you could call it. And yeah, apart from that, I'm pretty bog standard 28-year-old from Dublin, you know.
Brilliant. Kind of growing up, who got you involved in GAA and why hurling? Why did that stick out in your mind?
Well, my dad's from Mayo, a hurling stronghold, as everyone knows. Dad was the one who immersed us in GAA. Like, Dad is just a GAA nut. Like, he's like an encyclopedia of GAA, and he's just completely obsessed. Like, so that's where like it came from a young age. It was hurling football in hand, and out the back we have a relatively decent sized garden by Dublin standards, so that turned into a mini pro park. And I don't know where the hurling thing came from. Ironically, even though Dad's from Mayo, and Mum wouldn't have known a sliotar if it hit her in the face, so you'd think we all would have veered towards football. But ironically, myself, my eldest brother Sean, and my younger brother Cathal all probably ended up being a bit stronger when it came to hurling. And we've all probably represented Dublin at some age level along the way, so we all would have been stronger. So yeah, I don't really know where the hurling thing came from. We kind of more just seemed to naturally, I don't know, pick it up a bit more. You know.
Yeah. What age were you when you started getting involved in Dublin development squads?
I was a slightly late bloomer. Like, I would have been sent out at under 13 and 14 and 15, but never really made the cut. I would have been kind of in and out a bit. Under 16 then was kind of when I actually kind of, I suppose, progressed a bit. And that was really because we didn't have a goalkeeper at our age group, and they kind of looked at me and said, well, he's a good hand, he's a good strike, lacking probably about 10 yards of pace. Let's try him in the goal. And it worked out from there. I ended up playing in goal for Dublin at 16s, and it just kind of I accidentally ended up being a goalkeeper for a few years. Yeah. So but yeah, no, I didn't quit at outfield. My hurling was probably up to it. I'm going to give myself that, but my agility and my mobility and my speed in general just wasn't. So yeah,
because I think that in this day and age, like, even look at the Limerick lads. I know they're a different level, but it's athletes playing hurling. Like, it's athletes with a hurling touch. It's not lads, like, you know.
Yeah, the conditioning has just gone to, like, you look at the Limerick hurlers or the Tyrone footballers or any of them, like, conditioning has just gone to a whole new level. Like, and the Limerick team especially, like, they are just monsters of men. Like, absolute beasts. But yeah, no, it's gone to a crazy, like, it's professional in every sense. They're amateurs, but it's professional in everything but kind of actual money, I suppose.
Out of interest, if there's any particular young players listening, I always try to provide a little bit of advice for them. Let's say for the late bloomers, like you described yourself, what advice would you give anyone listening that isn't making those underage teams? What would you say to them?
I'd remind them that what happens at under 12, under 14, under 16, even as far as minor, doesn't really matter. And there are countless examples of people who, if you just stick at it, ended up making it. And like, it doesn't, like, obviously there's major examples, the likes, there's well documented ones like Bernard Brogan and Fenton and these lads, but even like the likes of Mick Fitzsimons, as far as I know, didn't make a county minor team and was a pretty bog standard cornerback on his Coola minor football team. And then all of a sudden, looking at him, he's probably become Mr. Consistency for Dublin for the past 10, 12 years. It's just, if people continue and keep honing their skills and keep working at it through 12, 14, 16, even 18, even if they're getting knockbacks, what then eventually happens is the drop-off rate is so great that if you keep applying yourself, and people improve at different rates and different paces. If you keep applying yourself, you never know what could happen. And there's countless examples of it. So yeah, I would even say not to take everything with a pinch of salt that happens at 12, 14, 16, because I guarantee you the fella who's dominating a club game or a county game at 14 may not even be playing 4 or 5 or 6 years later. Or if he is still, he'll be way back with the rest of the pack. So yeah, keep at it.
Brilliant. There was a tweet you had up, I think it was it under 16 or minor, and there was a goal, there was a picture of a goal being, you know the one I'm on about.
Don't do this to me.
Yeah, I was just gonna the ball went into the back of the net and it was in the paper, and you described all the lads slagging you, and I just want to kind of talk to you a little bit about, technically I'm media, let's say, and the media and the general public, I guess we don't really hold back when we're criticising players about their performances.
You have done your research. Jesus Christ. That photo was from a Dublin North Colleges game. So it was, I was playing for the Dublin North Colleges, and we were playing Westmeath in a Leinster Schools Championship game up in DCU. It was actually a pretty solid team. There was a lot of lads who went on to do very well in their GAA careers. Kieran Kilkenny would have been playing that day, Emma O'Keneally, Paul Winters, Conor McHugh, and high ball came in the first half. I was kind of backpedaling, misjudged it, put the hand up, missed it with my hand. It came down off the crossbar, bounced behind the line, but somehow managed to come back out. I picked it up, cleared it away, and the game went on. And then there was a bit of a furore. The ref blew it up, and there was an argument between the two umpires. One was Dublin, one was Westmeath. And anyway, goal wasn't given, and I think we won by 2 points.
Oh, so you actually won the game?
Yeah, we won the game by 2 or 1. The goal would have mattered. And I remember the following Tuesday in the Herald, one of the lads came back in after lunch with the newspaper, and he just put it on the desk in front of me, wetting himself laughing, being like, "You're a little cheat, Ryan, you're a little cheat." And my heart sank. And you know what? As lighthearted as it was for all the lads, and as much as whoever printed it in the paper probably didn't think anything of it, it absolutely destroyed me. Okay. Completely destroyed me. And as much as I managed to keep my position in goal for the Dublin Minors that year, and we got to an All Ireland final, from that very moment on, I was a slightly different player.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely destroyed my confidence. And it was ironic, because the one thing you would have said about me as a keeper, you might have said he's not that agile, he might be able to save the ball down in the corner. But the one thing you would have said about me was he's exceptionally safe under a high ball.
Right.
And I would have been at the time. And then that just little thing in my mind, constantly there, every high ball from that moment on, a little thing in the back of my mind.
Yeah.
And it didn't become a massive problem. Look, I played all the way up to an All Ireland final that year and didn't make any mistakes under dropping balls or anything like that. But it definitely was there. And then after I got sick a while after the All Ireland final, it definitely became more exacerbated. So it definitely taught me a lesson in terms of what we say about players, what is written about them in papers, what's written about them in forums, what's said about them in interviews. It's very easy to forget that although the lads playing in Crow Park in the height of the summer might appear like gladiators when you're sitting in the stands, they're very much human, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Do you think that goal kind of was that first bit? I suppose you were only new to goalkeeping. You were probably only in there about a year or two. And was that the first kind of big mistake? The self-doubt starts to kind of creep in at that point?
Yeah, that was the first. That would have been the first big mistake I made in goal, or the first one that really affected me. Obviously, when you're playing goal, like there's balls that you maybe should have got there, you should have saved, but that was the first big one that dented my confidence, and it really did dent my confidence. And once that doubt creeps in,
particularly as a
like,
goalkeeper, I think.
Yeah, like the reality is, as a goalie, like so much of it is mental. Like if you're playing at that level, if you're playing at a county level or a colleges level or a Fitzgibbon Cup level, you, in terms of technical ability and the basics of the game, you wouldn't be at that level if you couldn't do them. So therefore, what stops you doing them? What makes you make a mistake if you miss a first touch of your hand, or you drop a ball out of your hand, or you don't save a shot that you should have saved? Chances are it's mental.
Yeah.
Whether it's concentration, lack of concentration, doubt, something. It's all upstairs as a keeper. Like having this insane confidence in yourself is so important. And to be honest, I probably didn't have a personality type to be a good goalkeeper. Like I'm innately quiet. As kind of proved to be in the past couple of months just gone by, I'd have massive self-esteem issues and self-worth issues. So in terms of building that natural confidence and exuding that kind of natural confidence, I clearly never really had that aspect of it. I was a makeshift goalkeeper in every form at county level and at Fitzgibbon Cup level, and I was an exceptionally bog standard and average keeper at those levels. And I'd be the first person to say that. Like, I did a job on teams that didn't have anyone else to do a job.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Do you think, like, the argument's kind of been there for minor to change it back to 18 and for 20s to go to 21? And I know Jason Sherlock was talking about this. I can't remember when I did direct subject. I could have been off the ball, but he was saying that we put kids on a pedestal at quite a young age in the GAA, and I'm pretty sure it was him now, but they were saying about removing the All Ireland finals from Croke Park at minor, which I kind of agree with, and I would see 20s more as a kind of a lead up to the final. Do you think maybe in the GAA we put a lot of pressure on kids at under 16, minor, even 20? Senior is another topic, but that we put this like pedestal, and for example, if a goal goes in, the bigger the pedestal, the harder the fall. What do you make of that?
Yeah, like I completely agree. Like I will admit and hold my hands up, I'd be quite strong on this. And some people would say I'm on one end of the extreme when it comes to this. But like, I despair when I see some of the, can I curse, Orla?
Go ahead. Yeah, it's all right.
Sorry,
ma'am.
When I see some of the bullshit that goes on at underage county and club level, like the pressure that is put on young lads by people who are over these teams, who don't have the emotional intelligence to realize what this environment and what it all should really be about. Mm-hmm. Like, a dead giveaway for me is if you ever hear a manager of an underage team or a selector or a coach talk about the group as my team. Oh, it's my team. I'm doing this with them. We're doing this. Like, you're a facilitator. That's all you are. You are a facilitator and a guardian in a sense, and someone who should be looking out for these kids, not bigging up an under 15 club game so much, or even an under 15 county game so much, that young lads are coming out riddled with anxiety and nerves, afraid to make a mistake and afraid to express themselves. I look at it like, whatever. Look, when you get to county minor level and county under 21 level and county senior level, look, you can Fitzgibbon, you can make the argument, look, at the end of the day, it is about winning. And yes, you can make that argument. But at club level and underage county level, like, none of it. It's all just bullshit. Like, it's all this fake bravado and that gets instilled into young lads that isn't necessary. Like, I look at, like, you see footage of underage games and mass brawls breaking out.
Yeah,
like,
Wicklow. Yeah.
Like, Jesus Christ, like, what are we trying to teach young people? Like, for up until the age of, if you're club underage or county underage, what is the most important things you should be teaching the young lads or girls? One, how to carry themselves, how to conduct themselves, and how to play the game that they love. And that should be it.
Yeah.
And look, admittedly, I will be quite strong on that. And anyone who's played under me at, whether it's coaching Dublin Minor or 21 goalkeepers, or me when I managed the under 21 team in my local club, anyone who's played under me will say, look, his approach is slightly different, but I genuinely believe in those things. It's not about the people who are in charge. It's about facilitating these young players to be good people on the pitch, good people off the pitch, and enjoy themselves and do it with a smile on their face. The rest of it is just a load of crap. Now, admittedly, county minor 21 senior level, I hold my hands up and say, right, maybe it has to be taken in a slightly different environment or a culture. That's fair enough. But yeah, I struggle with a lot of the stuff I see, or like it's just, you know.
I've seen similar things, unfortunately. Out of interest then, as a solution, or even like talking about your approach, you said it's a little bit different. I'd nearly have to ask the players, but how do you approach your coaching then a little bit differently, keeping in mind about what we were just talking about?
Like, say I took the club 21's team for the past, 3-4 years. And from the very off, I would tell them that it's their team and I'm just there to facilitate them. And to come to me with any ideas, thoughts, concepts that they would like to see around the environment, I would be very, very open with them that the most important thing to me at the very start is that they're all healthy and well, mentally and physically. So if there's anything going on at home, anything going on with them personally, text me. I'll meet them for a coffee at the drop of a phone. That supersedes and is more important than any result on the pitch. It very much try and bond them together as a unit to look after each other as brothers, so to speak. And even like 2 years ago, we had a county quarter final against Clontarf on a Saturday afternoon, and the lads did a charity sleep out that night in the club car park and raised about 8 or 9 grand for Dublin Simon instead of going out on the beer. All 40 of them in the freezing cold in November slept out after they won a county quarter final. And it's about instilling that sense of giving something back, remembering that this is great that we're able to play this. It's great that we have our health to be able to do this, but also you have to be a good person. You know, that little element of social responsibility. And that's really, really important to me. And I think it's really, really important that you bring young people up in this day and age in the right manner and you encourage them to behave well and act well. Like, I'll tell you straight up, if I'm over a team and I see one of my players strike someone and do something out of line for no good reason, I'll pull them. Or if I see them mouting at the referee, I'll pull them. If anyone mouts at a referee on a team that I'm meant to be looking after, off. Carry yourself well, conduct yourself appropriately, and then just enjoy yourself and feel like you're in a safe environment. That's just my concept. Most people will say it's a bit airy-fairy. The other thing is look after the lads. After every training session, bunch of sweets, bars, chocolates, bit of cake, soup, tea, coffee. Always look after them. And that might seem like simple things, but by giving them that little 15-20 euro gesture at the end of every training session, that makes them feel like, actually, do you know what, this guy does care about us and this backroom team does care about us and they want us to succeed and they genuinely do care. So I know that if I'm having a bad day tomorrow and I can't go training, I don't have to pick up the phone and lie to them. I can just say, look, my head's not in it tonight. Can I have a night off? Yeah, of course, no problem. It's just, for me, it's all about environment. And I know the word culture gets thrown around. I won't even say that, but environment and making sure you're approachable for young people and that they feel like they can come to you, and realizing that it's not about you, it's about them. And it's trying to not just turn them into good players and to be a successful team, but trying to foster this idea in them that just carry yourself well, be a good person. And I'd hold my hands up and say that's a perfectly fine thing to do at club 21's level, and maybe if I'm working with underage keepers at county level, but at the very top level that won't cut it. And I'm very aware of that. I'm very aware of the limitations of my approach, because you have to be cutthroat. And I'm a people person, but I'm probably not cutthroat. You know?
I know what you mean. Talking about your coaching and from your experience, again, just with an All Ireland final, what did you learn from that experience? How do you approach that big game? Because I suppose that you said Crow Park was your back garden for years. So what's that like?
Looking back, I have despite the fact we lost an All Ireland final, we got a bit of a trimming in the All Ireland final. Really, we got bet by 9 or 10 points. I do look back quite fondly on it. To be honest, it was like my childhood dream was never immediately play Dublin Senior. Growing up, my team was, I want to play for the Dublin Minors, because I saw my older brother do it and I thought it was cool, and I was like, I want to play for the Dublin Minors. And maybe it was the fact that I was a bit more measured as a child and I wouldn't let my thoughts get too far ahead of myself. So it was play with Dublin Minors. So it was again, cliche and cheesy as you want, but hurling was my life growing up. So it was dream come true type stuff. I don't know. I don't know how I approached it really. Like I probably didn't do anything particularly sports psychology that's out of this world, to be honest. I definitely did, because I was bricking it beforehand. I felt like I was probably going to throw. Yeah, I felt like I was going to throw up. I was riddled with kind of nervous excitement and anxiety the week of it. I don't think sports psychology was much of a thing for 18-year-olds in 2011. No, I don't know. Did I enjoy it? I probably didn't particularly enjoy it because I was so concerned about making a mistake, because it was such a big deal. But I look back on it quite fondly. But no, my approach. I had a pizza and 2 bags of jellies the night beforehand, so I don't think my approach was. Too professional. But it's funny the headspace you go to as a goalkeeper in a big game like that, because I would argue that, and this is me being brutally honest, and I mean insanely honest, I would argue that my priority at that time, me not making a mistake or messing up on that stage, was probably a bigger priority than us winning. If that makes sense.
I was actually about to ask you that, because I had a really interesting conversation with Hannah Tyrrell, and she said before every free, it's don't miss. That's what's going through her head. And I was going to ask you to get, because I'm doing this kind of, because you have a really interesting story with the pacemaker, and then I know the documentary, but to get to know you as a person, when you're in a game, is it don't make a mistake, or make a great save? What side are you on?
Oh, when I was in goal for all those years, from minor all the way up to 21, and even for Fitzgibbon Cup, it was don't make a mistake. It was a very negative bias. It was like, Jesus Christ, get through this 60 minutes and do not make a mistake. Yeah. Every high ball that was coming in, instead of being like, right, I'm going to catch this and I'm going to shift out to my right and deliver a good pass, it was high balls coming in, do not drop this.
Yeah.
Like my psychology of playing goal was horrific. Like, I'm amazed I even lasted as long as I did. Like, I hated it. I actually hated playing in goal, but I had the wherewithal to realise that if I wanted to play for the Dublin Minors and the Dublin 21s, and I wanted to play Fitzgibbon Cup, that goal was the only way I was going to do it.
Yeah.
So, but I didn't enjoy it. It's a horrible position. I don't know why anyone would like to play there.
Yeah.
Genuinely, and that sounds a bit bizarre from someone who's a bit nuts, though.
Yeah.
You know, and I consider, and I coach goalkeepers, and I have done at a pretty high level. Like, I still don't know why anyone would want to do it.
Yeah.
And it's all upstairs. Goalkeeping is so much upstairs, you know.
Yeah, it's a crazy position. Like, it's just so specialized. Like, it's really, like you said, it's a certain character, and maybe you were saying before, you didn't fit into the kind of traditional or required character that it needs to be a keeper.
Like, if you and I didn't, mindset wise I didn't, and personality wise I probably didn't, and that's not to stereotype any lads, but like, it is, if you take all the sports in the world and take all the potentially specialist positions and what's involved, I would argue that hurling goalkeeping, especially the way it's gone now, is right up there with as tough as it gets. I think there's so much to it. Like, to try and stop a really hard small ball that's moving at 70, 80, 90 miles an hour. And then even it's gotten so much harder in terms of, like, delivery now is so important. 10, 15 years ago, you could lump the ball down the pitch as far as you can. That's not allowed anymore. You have to be a quarterback as well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you have to be a receiver. You have to be a deliverer. You have to be making amazing saves. You know, you have to be brave. Like, you're not padded up. Like, I don't know. I think I'm full of admiration for the O'Murphys and Nicky Quaids of this world. I just think they're unbelievable sports people. I think you take a top level hurling goalkeeper, I think it's as talented mentally and physically and technically a position as you can be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Out of interest then, after the final, you go to DCU. I know the pacemaker came up that year, but when you go from an All Ireland final playing in goal for Dublin and you're going to DCU and you've your sights set now on under 21 Fitzgibbon, were you putting pressure on yourself to perform? Was it, I've done this, I need to go to the next stage now? Or was it, I've played minor and I'm content? What was your thinking about the whole journey?
Oh no, the plan was move on. Plan was push on. Plan was absolutely get on that Dublin under 21 team your first year out of minor and spend 3 years playing 21s for Dublin. That was the plan. 100% that was the plan. And then, as you said, things got
Changed differently.
Things changed.
And if you like, I'm just trying to understand, if you weren't enjoying it at the time, let's say in goal, were you pushing it just because it's the done thing to go from minor to under 21, or what was the thinking behind, even you were saying there, it's not even just play under 21, it's play 3 years of under 21, it's to be involved from the very beginning?
This is quite sad, and I wouldn't have been able to answer this question at the time if someone had said to me, why are you so hell-bent on going forward if you don't enjoy it? But looking back, I can answer it now, and it's quite a sad answer. I didn't have anything else. That was my identity. That's all I knew.
Okay.
I didn't know anything else. So it was just like, this is what I am. I am a hurler. I may not be enjoying this aspect of it too much, but I have to be the best that I can be, and this is all I know.
Yeah.
It's quite sad, really. It kind of shows how tunnel vision my upbringing was, but it's probably pretty normal.
I was just about to say, I think unfortunately that's a reality for a lot of kids who have played intercounty. It's football or hurling or camogie or ladies football is my life, and it's who I am. I'm Orla, and I'm not even Orla, I'm a footballer. I'm a hurler.
Yeah, and that's what I suppose when I ended up getting the pacemaker, then that really forced me to question that whole thing. But yeah, no, that's why, even though I wasn't enjoying it, I didn't like playing goal, that was just what I had to do.
Yeah.
Press on.
So talk us through the pacemaker. So it was, everything had gone perfectly up to the point, All Ireland final, pushing for under 21s, you're going to college, you have your sights set, and you were playing, was it a football match you were playing?
Playing a county semi-final football game out in Tala. It was in the October, so the All Ireland final had only been about 6 weeks previous, and I got very faint and dizzy on the pitch. Got chest pain, couldn't breathe, started hyperventilating, didn't really know what was wrong. Got brought to Tala Hospital. They sent me home, told me I was fine. Time went on. We kind of got to Christmas and January, and pre-season training was starting then. And basically twice more during pre-season, anytime I really exerted myself, I started getting breathless, chest pains, dizzy spells. And we kind of knew there was something not right here. Now, I'm quite a bad asthmatic. I have to take steroids for my asthma. So that will be in the background. So we were like, it must be the asthma. There's something gone wrong. Needs a new steroid, needs a new inhaler, whatever. But my dad had seen it happen, and he just got some sort of weird, I don't know, sixth sense call it, being like, there's something not right here. And he pressed my doctor to get tests done on my heart, even though the doctors were saying it's not his heart, but they checked my heart. Dad pushed them, and they were like, look, just to keep you happy, we'll put a 24-hour heart monitor on him. So this was February 2012, 6 months after the All Ireland final. And I wore it, brought it back, and I was in town on a Friday afternoon after college, and I get this phone call being like, Cormac, where are you? This is a doctor from Beaumont Hospital. We need you to come in straight away. I was like, okay, right, grand. Didn't really think much of it. Took my time going home, went home, had food. I was eating food at home, and they were like, where are you? You need to get up here ASAP. Got up to Beaumont, walked into A&E, gave my name, and they brought me got a wheelchair straight away from me, put me in a wheelchair and brought me up to coronary care. They wouldn't let me walk up. Literally was in A&E 2 minutes, and I was up onto the coronary care ward. And yeah, it was that kind of started a whole series of events over 2 weeks, whereby I was monitored 24/7, and every test under the sun was done on me. So basically what they found was my heart was stopping for about 5 seconds at a time, and I wouldn't even notice. My heart was skipping beats, going into irregular rhythms, and basically my heart rate was dropping super low, especially at night. It was dropping down to late 20s, early 30s. And I was not that fit. And basically what they diagnosed me with was a condition called heart block. So structurally, my heart is pretty sound. Electrically, the electrical impulses that run through your heart to make your heart beat, that's where my issue is. They get a bit messed up. Okay. So in hospital for 2 weeks, they put in a pacemaker and tell me I should probably take a year out of college and tell me no contact sports. And you can imagine how that went down. So yeah.
Did that only to develop then around you being 18? There was no issues up to that point? No symptoms. Okay. So they one of the more frustrating things is that they still to this day, I was only with my cardiologist yesterday, and we were having this conversation still, and they still to this day can't tell me why it happened. Okay.
So all they can do is hypothesize. So they said either there was just some sort of irregularity that was there since birth, and I never noticed it and I never became symptomatic with it, or it was from all the crazy training over the years, it created this electrical fault. Or they said most likely, but they can't be sure, is that I had some sort of slight abnormality that was exacerbated by all the activity and the training. That's
Okay.
the best. That's the best bet they can give, but
Okay.
they can't be sure. But no symptoms up until the October after the All Ireland.
Okay.
You know,
And what's it like? Like you were thinking of was cooking a pizza. I heard in the Tackling Sport podcast, and you go into A&E, and then like everyone like 2 minutes in A&E, and we being wheeled up to CCU. That just shows the gravity of the situation. What's that like going from yeah, I'm just going to hospital to oh my god, like this is a serious issue here.
it still didn't hit me for a couple of days. I went in on a Friday and I still was like, oh, I'll be out by Sunday or Monday. Like it didn't, the gravity of the situation, it hit me to a degree. The consultant came over and shook my dad's hand and thought he was me. He was like, you must be Cormac. And I was a bit like, okay, this can't be good. But then I kind of pushed it off, brushed it off. I was like, simple mistake. Couldn't be that bad.
Yeah.
And I thought I'd be out by the Monday. And then it was only the Monday or the Tuesday, the seriousness of the situation kind of hit me when they started mentioning a pacemaker.
Okay.
They were like, we don't know yet, but maybe. And then I was like, oh shit, this is serious.
Yeah.
And then that's when my world started crumbling, I suppose.
Yeah. And they said no contact sports.
Yeah, specifically the one of the cardiologists was like, no contact sports, pacemakers and contact sports, too dangerous. And then there was the day they said that to me, I was devastated. I
Yeah.
was traumatized. Still, probably to this day, still one of the moments that are like one of the worst moments ever in my life. I'd say I was just in terms of emotion and how visceral it became. I honestly thought like I keeled over nearly.
Yeah.
But eventually, then there was a whole conversation that went on kind of behind my back that I probably didn't realize was going on. My parents were like to the doctors, like, "Look, you take sport away from this kid, like he will crumble."
Yeah.
So the cardiologist reluctantly agreed to kind of meet me halfway. So pacemaker actually got implanted a good bit deeper. So usually they just slip it under,
Okay.
yeah, usually they just slip it under the skin, but they put it in underneath my pec muscles and kind of said, look, go away and try to build that area up a bit. And then I have to wear a protective guard, which is basically like just like a kind of a skin or an Under Armour top that has a little pocket and a little plate goes in to protect the area.
Okay.
So that was the agreement we came to. And look, thankfully, I got back playing with Dublin and my club and Fitzgibbon Cup, and I've never had any bother with it. So
Wow.
I was very, very lucky, because there aren't that many, there aren't an awful lot of people with pacemakers still playing hurling football. So yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's like that. As you were saying before, like your identity was hurling, so to go to that conversation was obviously very difficult. But the fact that he met you halfway, like fair play to him. What's it like then going back to sport? I know, or you took a bit of time off college, was it?
Yeah, took a year out.
What was the thinking behind that? Your parents kind of pushed you for that more than I think it was you, was it?
Yeah, mentally, I think they just sense mentally being like, this fella needs a bit of a break. He won't go well in college if he goes straight back. Like it was a massive shock to the system at 18. Like I was,
Yeah.
and I didn't deal with it well at all. Like I became quite depressed and really struggled with my mental health in the aftermath. So yeah, they kind of pushed it, and it was, in hindsight, it was a good decision. It was a very good decision, just to take the time.
Absolutely. What's it like though going through, like you were saying there, you're struggling with your mental health, and I know we were talking before we hit record, because it's not a common issue. Like you can't turn to your best pal and say, like the conversation, like he doesn't understand everything what's going through. What's it like trying to navigate through that path?
Very tricky, very difficult, very isolating. Like, what were my 18, 19-year-old lad mates meant to say? Like, I'm sure what could they say? They didn't know what to say. God love them. None of us had the emotional intelligence, first of all, to know what to say, compared to if it happened now 10 years later.
Yeah.
So none of us knew what to say, and I didn't know how to articulate what I was feeling, and I didn't know that what I was feeling was probably symptoms of depression. So very hard to navigate, and I turned down psychological support. And do you know what? The only way that got navigated successfully was kind of time. It was the only thing, because I wouldn't say therapeutically or in terms of psychological support it was navigated, or in terms of conversations that I had.
Okay.
It just took gradually over a course of time I came to terms with it. But at the time, look, if I knew now, if I knew then what I know now, I would have made the 18-year-old Cormac deal with it very differently. But sure, at that stage I didn't have a clue what I was at. So it went exactly, if you had watched that young man leave hospital then with the pacemaker in his chest and say, right, mentally, worst case scenario is this, that's probably some way along the lines of that it went.
Okay. Okay, yeah. And what stage did you get back involved with the Dublin under 21s?
So pacemaker went in February 2012, and I was back in with the Dublin under 21s by March or April 2013. March 2013, I think. Yeah.
And was that it wasn't under Joe that year, he was the following year, was it?
Yeah. Shea Boland was 2013 and Joe Fortune was 2014.
And what's it like going back into that squad, going in with the lads? Like, they all obviously probably knew that what was going on, and kind of going back. Did you ever, like, in the hospital bed, I guess, when they said no contact sports, you didn't think you'd ever get back to that point, and then you did?
Yeah, no, and to be honest, it's kind of what we went back to earlier about identity and stuff. Once I got back at 2013 level, and even though I never started another championship game for Dublin, once I got back at 2013 level and I had a number 16 jersey on me down in Parnell Park on championship day in 2013, once I got to that moment, hurling wise, I was pretty content.
Really?
Okay. Like don't get me wrong, I stayed playing because it's the game I love, but in terms of achievement, that was pretty much me. Like, I was, and I played the following year under 21 as well, and I played Fitzgibbon Cup. But in terms of county or high level, elite level hurling, being able, the way I looked at it was, I was like, right, I have this pacemaker, I'm not meant to be able to play contact sports, we're gonna do it, get me back playing at under 21 level with Dublin and get a jersey on my back on a championship day in Parnell Park or wherever, and I'll take it as a win and be happy with what I've done. And that's kind of what happened. Look, you could look at that as defeatist, or you could look at that as a whole different sort of ways, or some people would say fair play to you. But at that stage, my relationship with hurling had probably slightly changed, and I just kind of wanted to prove that you could get back from something like that. And once I did, I was kind of like, right, that's fine.
Yeah, it was kind of like this inner peace that was like, yeah, I did what I was going to do, and I'm kind of...
to a degree. To a degree. No, I still played the following year. I much more thoroughly enjoyed the following year. But as I said earlier, I wasn't the same keeper after the pacemaker, and I had kind of made my peace with it, you know.
Joe had quite an influence on you the following year.
Yeah, so like when I did get back playing, I know I said, all I wanted to do was get back playing, but when I did get back playing with the 21s, it was a shit show. Like, my confidence and self-worth and self-esteem was gone to shit, and I was terrified of playing in goal, because it really, obviously you have to have confidence playing in goal, and my confidence really suffered to the point where in 2013 I missed a lot of challenge games and training sessions. I'd just ring Shay and I'd be like, Shay, I'm not feeling well, but like really I wasn't feeling mentally well, but I'd tell him something was up physically, and I kind of took the piss a bit that year, but anyway, I got away with it. But then the following year, as I said, I got the jersey back on my back, and I kind of made peace with it then, and I actually tried not to play in 2014, and I was kind of happy enough with my decision. I was like, I don't enjoy this anymore. It's just stressful. I was having panic attacks at the thought of playing in goal. It's just like, this isn't for me. And I rang up, first I rang Emer Dignam, who would have been the selector on that team, and Emer would have been kind of a mentor to me over the years. I would have known her for a few years, and I rang her up and I said, look, this isn't for me. And I think she probably sensed that there was a bit more at play, and then kind of rang Joe, and Joe gave me a call as manager, and he said, look, I hear you're not playing. I need goalkeepers. Like, I need 2 or 3 high quality goalkeepers I'd like to have in the panel. And I think he got a sense that something was up, and he kind of, within the space of 15, 20 minutes, as much as I was trying to pawn him off and be like, look, I don't want to play for you, blah, 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 I think he sensed that there was something more at play. This wasn't just someone who didn't like the game. It was someone who was having massive confidence issues and was having panic attacks playing goal. And I eventually opened up to him and told him all that, and told him that I was still struggling day to day in my own head. And he made me a promise on the phone that day. He was like, look, if you come back in with us we'll take it very easy on you. We'll get you the help you need. We'll put the arm around your shoulder and we'll build you back up, and I'll get you back to a position where you're much more confident and where we sort out the stuff that's going on in your head as well. And I have to give it to him. That's what him and Emer and Dwayne did. They were very, probably unusually so for a county setup, arm around the shoulder, looked after me, would check in on me every day, text, how's today? Will I see you at training tonight? Do you feel up for doing 20 minutes in the goal tonight? No problem. If not, like all this stuff. And I don't know how they did it, but they built me back up. And by the end of that year, I was actually relatively confident playing in goal. And I wouldn't say I was anxiety free, but I was way, way more confident than I was. And it was fun because we ended up getting to a Leinster final that year. And I'm glad in hindsight that I did that year, because it was the last year when you're with the lads that you've played hurling with the whole time growing up. Yeah. And there's a nice bond there before lads stop playing with Dublin or before lads go on to senior. So that, and it would have been a shame to miss that. And like, they're all lads that I would have been very close to, because we got to an All Ireland final together and we had success at minor together. So yeah, no, Joe Fortune, all three of them, Joe Fortune and Emer and Dwayne, had a massive, massive influence on me. And even now, 7 years later, I'm still extremely close to them. I chat to Joe pretty much every day. Every day when I was off cycling across Europe, there'd be voice messages to him back. Same with Emer and Dwayne. Like, they're just three people who I've never been in a county setup like theirs. Is the way I describe it. They just take a slightly different approach, and it's not just, they don't look as the panel before them as 30 hurlers that can win them a Leinster title. They look at them as 30 developing individuals who it's equally as important that these guys are mentally and physically happy as well as hurling well on the pitch. And it's just a refreshing approach. And I think it's why I have so much time for them, really. So yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah. That's fantastic. Out of interest, for players who, let's say, as we were saying, struggle with the identity part of football and hurling, and they become the footballer and the hurler, what advice would you give them? What advice would you give them?
I just think it's very, I often say this in schools if I'm in doing talks or whatever. I just think it's so important to not pin your worth to one thing. And I'd encourage young lads and girls who are probably in an elite sporting setup now growing up, is to have other things that you do. Don't just play camogie, don't just play basketball, don't just play football. Have other things. As much as you might think it might take away from them, it probably won't. Like, play your sport, yes, but have music, or play your football, but don't give up the camogie. Like, go cycling or poetry or whatever it is you like on the side, or art. Like, always have something, and not to pin your worth on it. Don't think of yourself as a camogie player, as a football player, as a hurler. Think of I am Orla, I am Cormac, but I just so happen to play this sport. And I think that's how you end up building that's how you end up building resilience as well. People look at people and they're like, how are they so resilient? How can they bounce back so quickly? The most resilient people in this world are the people who don't pin their value as a human being to what they do. Because the second you pin your value or your self-worth to what you do, means that your view of yourself is purely dependent on how that task goes. Mm-hmm. And by the nature of sport and by the nature of work or studies, it can't always go well. So therefore you view yourself negatively. So that's the one thing I'd say. Never, as much as possible, don't pin your self-worth and self-esteem and who you are to what you do, because a lot of the time it can end badly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you interestingly took up cycling, or were you cycling before the pacemaker?
No. The cycling purely came from after I got the pacemaker. I wanted to try and give something back, probably because I had a bit of survivor's guilt and wanted to try and raise a bit of money for charity, probably to make myself feel better. So I got this notion. I was like, I'm going to cycle around the country. So myself and my brother and my cousins and one of my best friends, when I was 20, it was in 2013, so I was 19, cycled 1200k around Ireland. Wow. Five GAA players on bikes with no cycling experience whatsoever. So we did that 1200k over 10 days, and we raised. And then we did it again in 2015. We did the same project again, except this time we cycled through all 32 counties in Ireland in 10 days. Again, it was about 12 or 1300k. And we raised about 60 grand altogether between the two of them. Wow. So accidentally fell into cycling, purely accidentally, got sick, wanted to do a bit of charity work, said, oh, what can we do to raise a bit of money? Let's cycle around Ireland. So yeah, did that at 19 and 21. Yeah.
Wow. And you recently went from Achill to Athens, although I know the original trip was to go across the US.
Yeah, so I had always, like I was saying earlier about how hurling was my identity, and then I kind of came to peace with hurling, and I kind of started looking elsewhere. Endurance type sport is something that fascinates me. I don't know why. Like
Okay.
all the documentaries I watch when I'm on Netflix are about people climbing mountains, or people rowing across the Atlantic Ocean, or people cycling across continents, or running crazy marathons. I'm just fascinated by it, and I don't know why. It's always enthralled me. Even when I was playing hurling, it enthralled me. So I always had this notion that I wanted to cycle across the US, um, coast to coast. I just think it's such a cool thing to do, and I think it'd be a fascinating investigation of what you're capable of physically and mentally. So that was the plan to do that, and then COVID struck. So that put a spanner in the works because you couldn't get into the US until very recently. So myself, my cousin Stephen, and my best friend Niall, we couldn't delay America forever. So we said, right, what can we do instead? So we said, right, let's go across Europe and let's do an equidistant events. So it was the same distance across Europe, still be transcontinental. And we went from
Okay.
Achill to Athens, and it was just under 5,500 K. So we left in early September, and we got back towards the end of October. And yeah, just the most amazing experience. And we raised nearly just under €50,000 for BodyWhys and Pieta House. And yeah, like just the most amazing life experience, an amazing mental challenge, an amazing physical challenge. And yeah, I'm telling you what, seeing Europe by bike, going through all these places, like cycling through Albania and Montenegro and Bosnia and like Hungary and Slovakia, all these places where no one really goes except for flying in and out of major cities, and doing it all by bike. And just the most amazing experience.
What's it? I know you had a couple of dodgy hostel and accommodation during the trip.
Yeah, so we'd either camp, or we'd stay in like the cheapest, scaldiest hostel we could find. So we stayed in a place in Venice, and it was like €8 each, and like there was like hair in the toilet
Oh,
and hair
Jesus.
hair in the sink, and like there was no one at reception, and like it was real eerie. There was ants all over the furniture, like, and then middle of the night there was this banging on the door, and the doorbell kept going and going. We were like, what is going on? And we knew we were the only ones in place. We had to go down and answer the door, and your man was like, I'm meant to be staying here tonight. And we were like, well, we can't give you a key to your room, there's no one here. And we let him in, and then Niall, like the genius that he is, went rooting around reception and found a room key and gave it to him. Like just the scaldiest places ever, like some funky campsites in Eastern Europe. And yeah,
Yeah.
just epic. Like no day was ever boring.
Yeah.
Like
I'd say so.
something mad and wonderful happened every single day. Like,
Yeah.
we were in Albania, and we pulled up, and we were on the wrong street, and we were trying to find out where to go, and we had no data because we were outside the EU. And this Albanian dude in his 60s just rocks up to us. We couldn't speak Albanian. Didn't have a word of English, and he just starts gesturing at the bikes. And then he was like gestured at us to wait, and he went into his house and came back out with this three shot glasses and this like wine bottle filled with what I can only guess was some sort of like home brewed alcohol. And he filled up the three shot glasses and gave it to us. And I don't drink, like, and I can't handle it at all. And
Yeah.
he puts one in my head, and I'm looking at the two lads, and the two lads like laughing, thinking it's great, being like, well, you're gonna have to drink it, like, and the stuff burned the throat off us. So just wonderful interactions with some really just genuine people. And I'll tell you what, it taught me a lesson. As much as there's bad news out there that we see, and as much as we get skeptical about and prejudiced towards places we haven't been, 99.9% of the people in this world are just decent, honest people that will actually just want to help you if they come across you. So yeah.
Brilliant. That's good. Because it was interesting because you, like, insane camping, but you have to carry everything. So you have to
Yeah.
limit what you're going to bring because the heavier you are, the harder it's going to cycle. And you're not just going flat country roads, you're going up and down serious
Yeah.
hills.
Yeah, we crossed the Alps twice, and what people don't realize is that whole coastline of Croatia, Bosnia, Montenegro, Albania, Greece is constant mountains. Like, we had about 40,000 meters of elevation gain, which, if anyone cycling, any cycling head is listening, they'll know what that means. And we were self-supported, which was the hardest part. So every bit of food, water, clothing, spare tubes, spare parts, tools, everything, food, everything we wanted to bring, we had to carry. Clothes, tent, sleeping bag, sleeping mat. We had to carry everything. So we had about 15 kilos of gear. So like, it wasn't like we were cycling super light road bikes all over Europe, but they were big gravel bikes loaded with gear. And that added to the challenge. And we had to climb them up over the Alps twice. And like, but it was fun. It was great. And do you know what? There's a freedom with that.
Yeah.
You could stop where you wanted, pop up a little makeshift home with your tent wherever you wanted. Yeah, no, it was great. It was tough, like, but it was great.
Yeah, because at the start of was it the start of the summer you went into treatment, so it was a little bit like negotiation a bit with the team that, look lads, I'm going on the cycle, because I think at this point you had a plan for like 2 years, because I know you postponed it a couple of times. So what was it like having that conversation with them and going through treatment and then going on the cycle? And yes, when you finish this big cycle at the end, you're going to have this feeling of elation, but to go through what you've gone through and to raise so much money, the end feeling going through all of what you did must have been just undescribable.
Yeah, it was. I've just had the most bizarre couple of months. So I suppose to contextualize for people who don't know, I've struggled with an eating disorder for probably 6-7 years, and I never said a word because in my head I was a man and men don't get these problems, and I was so confused and isolated. And eventually I kind of came to terms with it in the past year or so, when things started to get really bad, and then since the new year it really spiraled. So
okay,
long story short, got signed off work in late April, went into treatment at the end of June, and spent 2 months there, and like walked into the consultant on the first day, like, and I was telling her about these cycle plans, like, and she was looking at me being like, sorry, what? I was like, yeah, I'm meant to be cycling across America/Europe, depending. And she was like, no, you are not. She was like, absolutely not is this happening. Like, there's no way this is happening. Like, you're not well. And I wasn't well at the time. And then luckily, thankfully, I spent 8 weeks there, and 8 weeks really working on myself and really digging down to the core of the eating disorder, and where my relationship with food and myself had broken down. And look, at the end of the 8 weeks, they gave me their blessing. Now I still, and 10 days later after leaving treatment for the eating disorder, I went and cycled across Europe. And now I still have to check in with my psychologist every 2 weeks while I was away, and my dietitian every 2 weeks while I was away, just to keep on top of things and keep me in check. But yeah, like, it was just the most, very hard to process. One, getting a diagnosis that you're a man with an eating disorder when you've thought for so long that didn't exist. 2, going into treatment and spending 8 weeks in there. 3, leaving and then having to cycle across Europe. And it wasn't physically cycling across Europe that was the hard part. It was having to eat 5,000 or 6,000 calories a day, when 6 months ago I was barely eating. And that was the hardest part about that trip, was eating enough to feel myself. Because mentally that was extremely challenging, and emotionally it was extremely challenging. But yeah, to get to the finish line, and like, I'm not going to say I wasn't emotional on the last day, because I was, but to get to that finish line in Athens at the Acropolis with the 2 boys, and have some of our family there, particularly after the journey I'd been on, like, not knowing if the cycle would happen, coming to terms with the diagnosis and everything like that. Like, it was an emotional finish. But you know what? It was, I said this in an interview recently. It was, we were coming into Athens, and I still had my headphones in, and the 2 boys were up ahead of me. And I just remember thinking to myself, I was like, you can literally do anything. They're like, if you can do what's gone on the past 4 or 5 months, I was like, you can literally do absolutely anything you want, man. And it was a nice feeling. For genuinely one of the first times in my life, I was genuinely content with myself and genuinely kind of proud of something I did. And that's something I never say, like, but yeah, no, it was just amazing. Crazy couple of months, but an amazing couple of months.
Because you did a takeover, and I went back to get the date, and it was June 10th. And I know you finished the cycle, was it October 28th? So
yeah,
in June 10th, you were training in Cork or Kerry. At that time, what stage were you with the eating disorder, and with because you weren't in treatment yet?
I went into treatment 2.5 weeks later. So I had probably just had my assessment, or was just waiting my assessment. Yeah, things weren't good when I did that takeover.
Yeah.
Things weren't great. I was really struggling. I was having panic attacks. I wasn't fueling myself adequately, if at all. My mind was just completely consumed and by food, like fear of gaining weight every moment of every day. I was paranoid about trying to either not eat, or if I had eaten, I was paranoid about the fact that I had just eaten. Like
Yeah.
my quality of life was gone at that stage. I don't know how I was doing the cycling I was doing. Like I still, looking back now, I can't figure it. Like that day I cycled 170k on a gravel bike. And I think I did it in like 6.5 hours or something stupid like that. Like, and like around Kerry up the hills. Like, and yeah, I wasn't in a great place. Things were bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I very much hit rock bottom around the start of the summer. Yeah. You
Okay.
know.
And you were saying before the comments and the culture in the GAA is probably at the moment like, and I was saying to you before, somebody I know, unfortunately, there a comment was made about their weight in a match, and it's just this culture at the moment that was that the kind of what happened over time was just these things building up, and that's what kind of like made you kind of feel like this, and kind of like you were saying, getting anxious about eating, or that voice where was that kind of not the main factor, but it was probably a contributor.
Yeah, 100% contributor. Like I got the pacemaker, and as I said, my mental health suffered, and I put on a bit of weight that time. So in 2013, when I was trying to get back playing, it was there. And look, they were all throwaway stuff, and people who said them probably don't even realize they've said them.
Yeah.
And if they said them to 90% of people, 90% of people wouldn't think anything of them. They'd
Yeah.
laugh them off. But for whatever reason, probably because my self-esteem and my self-confidence was so low and my mental health was so poor at the time, they just stuck with me and they lodged themselves in my brain. And it was throwaway stuff like, Jesus, you've put on a bit of timber. You're going to have to trim up a bit now. You're going to have to lean up. And geez, that jersey's looking a bit tighter on you. Like stupid, idiotic stuff. Like, but they had a massive effect on me. And I became very self-conscious. And as a 18, 19, 20-year-old lad, when you're self-conscious about weight, it's not something you verbalize. You don't say to people, oh, I don't like what I look like. Like that's just not, it's not said. Like, and
Yeah.
I internalized it. I turned it against myself, and I just went down this very dangerous and long road of really struggling with my body image, and that got worse, and kind of developing body dysmorphia, and then really limiting my calorie intake and my energy intake, and then that got worse, and cutting out meals, and then being afraid of certain types of food, and then panic attacks, and then thinking about making myself sick. But it all started off with seemingly unharmful comments that then became very harmful. And what worries me is the fact that you still hear them.
Yeah.
And again, like I said earlier, I admit that I'm probably on the further end of the spectrum on this in terms of my beliefs around this, but I just still think the GAA has an issue with this masculine, kind of this toxic masculinity culture and environment that doesn't exist on all teams, but exists on a lot of teams and in a lot of dressing rooms, whereby it's made with the bravado and the bullshit that goes on, it's made very difficult for people to be in any way vulnerable if stuff is going on, or if stuff is going on with them, it doesn't help the situation. And look, that's just my opinion. You'll get a lot of people that are saying, look, they'd probably call me a snowflake or something like that. Like, and I'm cool with that. But I think in male team environments, when you put that many men together, authenticity goes out the window. That's what I believe. I think authenticity and people being who they truly are and just being themselves goes out the window.
Yeah.
And I think that's problematic. And I think that's why people are afraid to open up. That's why I was afraid to tell anyone that every time before I go out playing a senior hurling league game in Dublin, I go into the bathroom, look in the mirror and stare at my legs and be like, okay, they don't look too bad. It'll be okay. You don't look too fat in that jersey. There wasn't a pick on me. There wasn't a pick on me. And yet I'd still do it. For every senior league game in hurling, I'd go in, fake that I was going to the toilet, and I'd look at myself in the mirror.
Wow.
Like I'd reduce my energy intake the week of a game rather than increase my energy intake, because I'd be afraid that I'd look heavy on a pitch and that someone would say something. And where does all that come from? It comes from not feeling like you can be honest. And that comes from the culture that's often there. And like, yeah, it's just my opinion on it. It wouldn't be everyone's take, but it's just my belief.
Well, I definitely, like, as you were saying there, everyone is different, but you're not the only one. You're not the only lad that's in the dressing room that feels like that, as you said, but they just don't want to speak out about it. Since the documentary and since you've kind of come out and talked about all this, has anyone reached out to you that's involved in GAA, whether a player, coach, parent, and has said, I know someone, or I can see some of your story in me, there is maybe an issue there?
Yeah, no, and it's Owen who did the documentary with us, Owen Kiernan. He coined this great phrase where he said, "It's our story, it's my story, it's our story, but it's also your story." And I
Brilliant.
feel like that's what it did. Is it really tried to encapsulate a lot of people's experience of EDs, or not even eating disorders, but just people who struggle with body image and just struggle with accepting who they are. And no, a lot of people have, like an awful lot. Like the reaction was truly overwhelming. Now, I'll be very honest, the reaction was still more so in terms of messages and people contacting, was still more so from females than males, which is fine because look, the reality is the rates of eating disorders are still higher in females than males, so you would expect that. But an awful lot of lads reached out and said, yeah, look, thanks for saying that. I get what you're saying about that GAA environment, and I've struggled with it too. And that was really nice and reassuring. And even the fact that it's allowed some men to feel like they can talk about it has been really, really powerful. And I'm under no doubt it's made a big difference, because it was such a stigmatized topic, and it still is really in a way. But we've shown that it is out there, it does exist. There are men with eating disorders. There are men who are 6'2" and 90 kilos like myself that have eating disorders. And that just because they play GAA or they play rugby or they play whatever, or basketball or whatever, doesn't mean that they're not susceptible to it, that they are. So no, it's been, people have reached out, and it's nice to know that I'm not the only one who has that opinion of the GAA world.
Because I was really, like, I was taken aback by the figures and the facts in the documentary, and like even like what the HSE planned, and to see that it's not been implemented, like, it's mental. Has there been any sort of response from the HSE, from TDs? I know I think the producer tweeted that nobody has replied with a comment, but do you think that we will see change from the documentary and from this conversation that it has sparked in the country, really?
I met Owen for a coffee this morning, and we were having this conversation, and neither of us are naive to think that Unspoken was going to cause all of a sudden a shift in political will, where all of a sudden money would be allocated to services, or that to be a massive change. We weren't that naive. We knew that it would cause a shift in how people would think about it and talk about it, which has been really positive. It was very much the first step on the ladder. I will be very honest, I feel like it's been a bit of a kick in the teeth from both Minister Donnelly and Minister Butler in terms of the lack of response. Like, production and Alan, the director, tried their best to get them involved and get a comment. And it wasn't like it was going to be an ambush. Like, this was a groundbreaking documentary on the national broadcaster about a topic that had never been spoken about in this way. And you would feel that, whatever about the Minister for Health, but you would feel that the Minister for Mental Health would see fit that it will be a nice opportunity to contribute. Because that's all. And I actually think the silence was deafening, because it's a shame, because Minister Butler has actually done a lot of good work in the area of eating disorders. But at the same time, it was a bit of a kick in the teeth, whereby 3 average Joes were putting themselves out there and being that vulnerable and raw on national television in a bid to try and help the situation. Yet the minister of that topic couldn't even, whatever about not coming on, but couldn't even find the time to acknowledge it or respond to it.
Yeah.
That's the bit that's a kick in the teeth. And if there was one part of this that I'd tell you to cut and plaster everywhere, it'd be what I've just said in the last 90 seconds.
Yeah.
Because, and it's not about me, Daniel, or Owen, that we deserve a response or that we deserve better, but all the people in this country who are suffering with it and who see this thing on the national broadcaster that they also suffer with, and the Minister of Mental Health doesn't even acknowledge it, or refuses to acknowledge the opportunity to come on and talk about it and give some positive updates, even, or say, look, I know things are tough, but I'm working on it. That was a bit of a kick in the teeth, to be honest.
Yeah, because what really struck me was obviously the whole documentary, but I remember vividly Daniel speaking about how he went to somebody before, and I know I'm paraphrasing here, but it was, you're not sick enough nearly, you're not skinny enough.
Yeah.
What was it? He compared him to a patient and said, I have a 15 or so year old girl who's worse than you or something.
Yeah.
And like that really took me by surprise. Is that's still the attitude that's in Ireland?
Yeah, and look, I think in fairness to most therapists that work with eating disorders, I think that experience is probably an outlier. I think most therapists would be tuned in enough to not say such a thing.
Mm-hmm.
But what it does show is just that the reality is, they say, like, the big thing with eating disorders is they try and tell us all when we're seeking help that you are sick enough, come forward, please reach out for help, because whatever tricks your mind is playing on you, you are sick enough and you do deserve to get better. But then if you do try and reach out and look for help in the public system,
mm-hmm.
the public system, by the nature of the lack of services, then essentially kicks you in the face and says, do you know what, you're not sick enough, buddy, go back there for a while and come back to us when you're completely emaciated.
Yeah.
That's essentially what happens.
Yeah.
You know, and that's, I think, what Daniel's piece was trying to show was that, one, probably the ignorance of the therapist who said that to him, but two, that in the eyes of the state and in the eyes of the public health system, he actually wasn't sick enough, because he wasn't enough underweight. So they were like, well, there's people who are more underweight than you, so we're going to put them in those beds first. Like, heartbreaking, demoralizing, and it's just wrong, you know.
Absolutely. For any of us listening, what can we do to help? Is there anything that the general public can do to help and get a response?
There's a few things. In terms of, if you want to help someone that's suffering with an eating disorder, or you suspect, or even just in general, if you want to just help in general, because you don't know when someone has an eating disorder, because 85% of people with eating disorders aren't actually underweight. So you never know who you're talking to. Be very mindful if you're ever commenting on someone's appearance, good or bad. Because I'll tell you one thing, and a lot of people won't get this, but if I'm up in the club or up in the pitch and someone comes up to me and they're like, you're looking fit, I don't take that well, because all that does is confirm to me that, do you know what, actually, people do look at what you look like.
Yeah.
And that might sound to some people will find that hard to understand.
Saying there. No, I know what you're saying.
It confirms to me that people, in fact, do look at what you look like. So my advice would be, never comment on anyone's appearance at all, right? And in terms of what people can do to help, the sad part is, as much as I would want to say, write to your local TDs and lobby your local TDs, politicians, like Daniel has tried to do that, and he hasn't got much. I don't think he's even got a response from a lot of them. And that's not to say don't do it. Jesus Christ, if anyone is willing to take the time to write to a local TD or politician about eating disorder services and the lack of, do it. But just in a general sense, I just think we still need to just keep opening up the conversation, because unfortunately, I think that's still the stage we're at. It's still so stigmatized that opening up the conversation and just trying to be as sympathetic towards people, because you might not be able to empathize. I will admit that eating disorders, when you don't have one, I can 100% understand how they're difficult to grasp and how it's difficult to see why that person is behaving in that way. But trying your best to sympathize as much as possible, and if you can at all, empathize. But that's still the stage that we're at. We still have such a long way to go. Like, there was like funding for eating disorder, there was meant to be a whole rake of specialist eating disorder hubs set up by now. There's only been 3. 2 of them have been delayed in the last couple of weeks. Like, the amount of funding for eating disorder services has been completely relocated. Like, funding for eating disorder services has been relocated when it wasn't meant to be over the last couple of years. Money was allocated and then not spent. Money has been withdrawn completely. And yet the greyhound racing industry, which it was recently reported had slaughtered up to 6,000 dogs, still gets 19 million in taxpayers funding. Now, I admit it probably sounds like I'm on a bit of a crusade here, but it's hard not to get frustrated when you have, not even me, because I wouldn't say I was necessarily failed by the public system, because I never went into it because I knew there wasn't any point. But I have very close friends now that I've grown extremely close to in the last year, who have been failed by the state and the public health system because they didn't get the care that they deserved or required. And then they were forced to go down an extremely, extremely expensive private healthcare route that can only cater for so many people.
Yeah. That is the reality, unfortunately. In the GAA sense of things, because I'm a player, I'm a coach, and maybe a lot of people listening are involved in sport, what can we do? Like, even you were saying there, don't comment on people's people's appearance, but is there anything we can do as in a small association, let's say, it's not that small, but in a controlled association, what can we do to stop the comments, to stop all of this that's contributing to a very toxic, like even for example, I don't know about what you think, but I would disagree with the tight fit jersey. I just think it's a bit mental to have this extremely tight fit jersey on. Like I know it probably started around 2013, I want to say, even maybe even later. Was it 2016 that everyone started going to tight fit?
Clubs probably, yeah. County probably already had them, but clubs, yeah, probably started then.
Yeah, which I think is a bit mental.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Like the amount of times we'd be up training or like it'd be before a game, the amount of lads who I've heard say, "Oh, I hate wearing these things."
Yeah.
Like the amount of them, and like it's all well and good if you're the senior football team in the club and you're highly conditioned. But again, not everyone can be highly conditioned and sculpted. Like it's because that doesn't take into like life circumstances, life stressors. Do you have kids at home? Are you busy? Like, what's your job? Like, not all of us can look like we're sculpted from rock. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, so yeah, no, I agree with you on the tight fit jerseys. To be honest, I think it probably has to come from the top down. It'd be very hard to enact change at grassroots level. That we probably need in the GAA a whole load of awareness campaigns, really. Okay. You know, from the top down, led by the organisation and led down through county boards and kind of welfare officers into clubs. And but it's a very difficult change, like, you know. And look, I'm well aware that not everyone will be susceptible to developing an eating disorder, and 90% of the people who those comments are said towards won't take them to heart and they'll be water off a duck's back. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's right.
Yeah.
You know, and do you know what I think we need in GA? To put it broadly and vaguely, we need a hell of a lot more emotional intelligence.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what we need. A hell of a lot more emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
Because I look at times and I just think it's lacking. And it's not just about comments about people's appearance or like conduct on a pitch, even in terms of just mental health in general. Like I just think we need to do a bit more work on it, you know. But that's just my opinion. Again, probably a bit biased.
Yeah, but like I don't think you're alone in the conversation. I definitely don't.
No, but I think at the top level it gets lost, and I can understand why it gets lost because it's essentially elite sport. But I just think that at times the GAA is losing sight of what it is. Like, at the end of the day, it's a community-based grassroots organization that gives so many people a sense of worth in their lives. Like the amount of people that, like, you hear, like you see it in every GAA club, the kind of man in his 60s or the lady in her 60s, and the husband or the wife has died or the son has died, but they're still involved in the club, and they go up every Sunday in the market pitch and they watch the senior football game and they go down for a drink in the club after. Like, that's in essence what it is.
Yeah.
But then at the very top level, I think we lose it, and then there's a disconnect. Under no circumstances should a club game be delayed because one lad out of a panel of 30 has a county game coming up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if we still want the gladiators in Croke Park, separate it completely. Like, separate that bunch completely in that cohort. And obviously there's practicalities here that I'm not thinking about, but to maintain what the GAA is truly about, if you're at that elite level and you can get to that elite level, well, then you're a separate entity. You're a Dublin player, or you're a Mayo player, or you're a Kerry player, and pay them and look after them and let them be the professional athletes, but keep it separate to the grassroots. Like that, like, because I just think so much of it is getting lost. And it's and then what's happened, like even senior club level, like lads getting reprimanded for stuff that they shouldn't be reprimanded for on senior club teams, like you know, and
bans,
like drinking bads and being told, no, you can't play football. What do you mean you can't play football? You're a senior hurler, you can't play football.
Yeah.
Like, that's absolute bullshit. Like, who are you to tell a lad that he can't play a sport that he's grown up and played all his life? And the reality is, if the limiting factor to a senior football team in a dual club is the fact that some lads play both sports, well, then so be it. Like, it's a community-based organization that's meant to be about enjoyment and you're telling a lad, no, they can only play one code. Like, and that's just one example. There's countless different examples and anecdotes you can give. But stuff like that, I just struggle with it a bit. I just think we, as an organisation, we just slightly are losing sight of what it's about. And as much as the elitism and the professionalism gives us amazing spectacles and entertainment, I'm not denying that, but that comes at too big of an impact to the other 99%. So separate it. You know,
I think it's nearly got to that stage now. Even the commitment levels, and as you were saying, like, they're professionals. Like, they really are. They're just not getting paid. And even you could argue with the commitment levels that club seniors going to. It's now like kind of going out of hand a little bit from what the things I'm hearing. Now, some of it could be rumours, but I don't think it's far off what's actually happening.
Oh no, it's not. Like the top senior clubs that are competing for championships in their own respective counties are probably at a level that county teams were at 10 or 15 years ago.
Yeah.
In terms of application and commitment and professionalism. Like, there were county teams, there's club teams all over the country now that have GPSs, and there's club teams getting food after training. And there was probably county teams 15 years ago that weren't getting that.
And there's still a few county teams without GPSs, I've heard.
I wouldn't be surprised. You know, like, it's just crazy. Like, it's just gone so. And look, it's each lad's own prerogative. Like, if lads want to play and they genuinely enjoy it and love it, yes. But the argument I would make is that it's gone so professional that, say in Dublin, for example, if you're not in a Coola, Kilmacud, Ballyboden, Nafina, Jude's, and you aren't at, or Ballymun-Kickums, and you're not within close of winning a senior football or senior hurling championship, and you're in that kind of next cohort down that realistically probably can't win it, but you are applying yourself like a senior county player does in some ways, I would bet you ask a lot of the lads how much enjoyment is in it, and they're telling you there's an awful lot of it gone. You know, and I think that's why a lot more lads aren't doing it anymore. You know.
Yeah, definitely. I've definitely noticed like even you were saying earlier, people are dropping out earlier. Lads are, like, let's say, dropping to the second team, or just aren't committing to even picking one over the other. Out of interest, how have Whitehall done it? Because they're senior in both codes. They knocked out, was it Vincent's or Plunkett's they knocked out in the football?
They relegated Vincent's in the football this year.
So how have they balanced both, and having a multitude of dual players? Like, I know, for example, Cormac Costello, but there's a good few other ones as well.
There are, Owen O'Donnell and Lee Gannon and Endo O'Donnell, all these boys play both. And there's more, just like they're the county lads, but like Whitehall could have 12 or 13 dual players playing senior in both every year. And we managed it by having the same manager over both teams for a few years, which actually worked really well.
Okay.
It worked spectacularly well. Yeah, it was a really interesting, and it was quite new and novel, and it was brilliant. So we had the same manager over both teams, and then two separate coaches, and it was brilliant because there was no tug of war then between the managers about players. And that has probably been the way we found the best way to run it so far. But again, there's not many people who are actually capable of doing that, who'd have the expertise in hurling and football. And we were very lucky that the individual we had was able to do that. A magnificent coach and manager, a guy called Ger O'Connor. He's actually a GAA coach. Like, he's employed by Leinster GAA as a games promotion officer and a head of games. So we were so lucky to get him. Like, and he's from Tyrone, but would obviously have big football background, but played hurling for Tyrone. Just a brilliant coach, and he did that for 3 or 4 years with us, and it was just amazing. And that was unbelievably refreshing. But yeah, in Whitehall, you're not forced to pick. Now, some lads, look, there'd be conversations you'd hear. Some lads would feel quite strongly that you should be forced to pick, and I would be different. I'd be of the opinion that if the limiting factor in the senior hurling team or senior football team winning a senior hurling or football championship is the fact that we have dual players, well then so be it. If lads only want to play one, so be it. But I don't think at club level ever a player should be told, no, you're not allowed to do that. In my opinion, that's just wrong. And again, you're losing sight then of what the GAA is. So no, we manage it. We have a lot of dual players. It's difficult. I'm not going to say it doesn't hold back both codes at different stages, but I don't know. I guess it's about what do you want more, you know. And I think it's just right to let lads play what they want to play.
Yeah, exactly. It was slightly off topic, but it does still come back to letting lads do what they want. You put up an Instagram post, I think it was last month. So It'd be 672 months left. The director said action the moment you were born, and this movie can't last forever. So what's the plan for the next 672 months or so?
You're giving me extra months, Orla. 637.
Oh, am I?
637.
Sorry.
I'll take the extra months though. What's the next plan? I'll be honest, I kind of tend to have lofty dreams and ambitions, and as cheesy as that may sound, I genuinely believe that. Like, I'm acutely aware that we don't get to stay on this planet forever, and the last thing I ever want to do is regret not doing things or be on my deathbed and be like, I wish I did this and I wish I did that. And the reason I genuinely believe why most people don't do things in life is because, one, they're afraid to be their true self, and they're afraid of what people will think of them. They're afraid of absconding from society's expectations of a normal 22 or a normal 28-year-old lad or girl. So I genuinely believe you just have to do the things you want to do, and that there's no harm from putting yourself out there, and that failure doesn't exist. Failure is not actually a thing. You try something and you don't get the exact desired outcome, you're still further along than where you were before you tried. Failure doesn't exist. Failure is just a word that doesn't, it's not a thing. People just think that it's a thing. But anyway, what's next? The whole idea of cycling across the US is still very much in my mind. It's been an ambition I've had for years. And I'm toying with that at the moment. So we'll see. By next summer, if I'm chatting to you, I may have cycled across the US. I don't quite know yet. I'll still play a bit of junior football and hurling for Whitehall, Columkill. I don't know if senior will ever come back on the radar again. I don't think it will be healthy for me with the eating disorder. I think I've become too paranoid about my body composition and the kind of relationship that has with performance. Ultimately, I think endurance, kind of cycling and running, will probably be the direction I'll head. But I don't think it will be racing. Like, I don't think I'll ever get into timed triathlons, maybe, or trying to get my 10K or half marathon down as low as I can, or trying to get my pace. Like, I've ditched the Garmin, I've ditched the Strava.
Okay.
I just do it for enjoyment. Like, I think I'll do some crazy challenges. Like, I think I'll try and do Malin to Mizzen in 24 hours at some point.
Wow.
Like, stuff like that. I'd love to get into some like mountain running and stuff like that. But yeah, we'll see.
What do you think? After all you've done, and you've what I wanted to talk to you about, and why I focus so much on you as an individual, maybe at hurling and younger, was to get an idea of the sense of who you were. What do you think is going to be your legacy when you stop cycling, when you're not involved with GAA? What do you think is going to be that kind of lasting impact that you've made?
A very good friend of mine sent me a text. I think it was the last day of the cycle. It was the morning of the last day of the cycle, or the night before the last day. And he sent me this quote, and it was that the things you do for yourself isn't your legacy. Your true legacy is the things you do for others. And it really resonated with me, because I think it's so true. And I genuinely believe it's an important way to approach life. I don't know, legacy, the word legacy makes me feel a bit uncomfortable, because it makes me kind of sound like I'm some sort of thing that I'm not. I'm just an average person who does just average things that he likes to do. I'd like to hope that over the last 10 years, between the cycling and talking about stuff and being open and honest, I'd just like to hope that I've had a genuine impact on a few people's lives. And if I was in a car crash tomorrow and a few people could go to my parents and say, he made a difference to my life, then all the other bullshit about achievements and master's degrees and achievements on a hurling pitch and awards and all that shit doesn't really matter, because none of it matters. It's all bullshit. So yeah, if I died tomorrow and a few people could rock up to the house and tell my parents that I made an impact on their life, I'd take that, Because
that was because I was reading online, I think it was director or producer tweeted it, or you talked about it, was originally, did you say no to it, to the documentary?
I didn't say a flat out no, but I needed a bit of time to think about it, because I had literally been signed off work 3 or 4 days, and then the phone call came through being like, oh, we've got funding for this thing, we'd love you to be involved. And at this stage I was in the thick of it. Like I was a shell of a human. I was so broken, so confused, and all of a sudden they want to put cameras in front of me. And I didn't even have a diagnosis at this stage. I hadn't even met the consultant.
Okay.
I was still trying to figure out what direction to go. So yeah, I was hesitant at the start, more so because I was like, I don't know if I'll be able to do this.
Yeah, okay.
You know? And then there, I suppose, after a bit of chatting, there was just this realization that maybe this is fate and maybe our paths have crossed at this time for a reason. And then it kind of felt like there was a bit of an onus. You know, Alan said to me in the aftermath, Alan's the director, in the aftermath, he has said to me that like he could have spent years looking to try and find a male who has an eating disorder, who had just hit rock bottom, and who was willing to let a camera crew follow them through treatment. He said he could spend years trying to find that and never find it.
Yeah.
And when I realized that that's actually what I was, it kind of felt then like there was an onus on me just to do it, because I was aware of how impactful it could be. Yeah. And that's genuine. And I know that sounds a bit fluffy and like I'm playing the martyr, but it was genuine. My dad is, I immediately told my other half and my mother, and they were like, no, you can't, you're not well, there's no way. And my dad be pretty old school, west of Ireland, like typical, fairly stereotypical, like and he didn't say anything at the time. And then he piped up as the conversation was going on. He just said to me one line, he just said, would this have helped you? And I said, if I had seen this 3-4 years ago, I don't know whether it would have made me Tology or whether it would have necessarily made me go to therapy for help, but it would have definitely made me feel a lot less alone and like I wasn't going crazy, and that would have taken some of the pain away. And then he said, do it. And like once my dad, in fairness to my dad, like he was, I don't know whether it was a psych nursing background, but he was the one who probably pushed me over the edge, like, and because he was, of all people, I was expecting him. He's Mr. like doesn't have a clue about technology. Of all people, I was expecting him to be like, not a fucking chance. So yeah, we let them in the end.
Yeah, that's pretty powerful. I'm going to move on to sideline 7. It's probably the worst transition I've ever done, because we're talking about something completely different, but the sideline 7, it's the same 7 questions at the end of every episode. You can take it as thought-provoking or fire end. It's entirely up to you. Question 1, what is your favourite quote?
Oh Jesus, what is my favourite quote?
Are you a big quotes fan? I get
oh, I love a good quote. Yeah, I love it. The lads, the people, my mates always slag me, but I love a good quote. Yeah, the one that I just said about the legacy, it's not what you do for yourself that's your legacy, but what you do for others. Always strikes me. But the other one I'd say is no state of being is ever present. No state of being is, what is it? No state of being is ever constant. And that I always tell myself that on a bad day, or if I'm having a tough day with food, or I'm feeling pretty anxious, or or you're in the thick of it and struggling on the bike some days, no state of being is ever constant. It's kind of a nice reminder that things can always change and things will always lift and it can always get bright again, you know. So yeah, probably one of those two. But the legacy one that a good friend of mine sent me on that last day of the cycle has kind of stuck with me forever, you know.
That is, I've actually noted it down there, because I'm like you, I'm a massive quotes fan. Have you listened to the High Performance podcast out of interest?
Yeah, I've dipped in and out of it.
There's a brilliant one with Susie Ma, and she talks about infinite purpose, and it's kind of similar, and you probably really enjoy it. She's tropical skincare, which is so random, but she's actually a brilliant episode. I think you'd really enjoy it if you haven't listened to it already.
I will.
Question 2, best sporting event you've been to, and you can pick that out as a player or a fan or both.
Player, playing an All Ireland final in Crow Park on Ireland final day. And fan, went to a Steelers game in Heinz Field when I was in the States. That was pretty cool. Yeah. Just to see a full Heinz Field. Or I went to a Major League Baseball game in Pittsburgh as well, in the Pittsburgh Pirates home stadium, which is it's an exceptionally cool baseball stadium. I'd say Heinz Field for a Steelers game was pretty cool. When I was on internship, got to work as an athletic therapist in a few kind of college football games. They were pretty cool too. Just seeing a different sport that up close and personal was pretty cool. Yeah. So one of them.
Brilliant. Biggest setback or challenge so far in your career?
Yeah, probably the coming to terms with the eating disorder, even more so than the pacemaker. Yeah.
Okay.
The eating disorder has been a different beast altogether. And I'm still coming to terms with, that was definitely the biggest setback. If I was to narrow it down to a time, waking up that morning and realizing that I couldn't hide it anymore, and realizing and finally acknowledging with myself that there actually is a problem here. Like the day I was sitting there with the consultant, she looked me in the eye, and as much as I was in denial, she was like, "You have an eating disorder. You need to get better. You're not well." That was probably the biggest setback. At that stage, I was like, I don't see how there's a way out of this. So yeah, probably that.
What's been your biggest achievement then?
I struggle with achievement because I did struggle with achievement, and not so much anymore. I don't know if I don't know. People would tell you what your biggest achievement is varied in different things. There's two that stand out to me. One, or maybe more what I'm most proud of. I'm very proud of the fact that over the last 10 years, through not just my cycling endeavors, but my cousin Stephen, my best friend Niall, and everyone else who's been involved over the years, that we've raised over €100,000 for various charities. I'm extremely proud of that. And I actually think my biggest purely achievement, was leaving to cycle across Europe 10 days after leaving treatment for an eating disorder, doing the cycle, and coming back within 0.1 of a kilo of the weight I was when I left. Now that mightn't sound like a big deal to a lot of people. They're like, you just have to eat. But when I had to, given that I had to eat 5,000 or 6,000 calories a day, considering 3-4 months previous I wasn't eating, to get through, no one will understand this unless they've had an eating disorder, but the mental turmoil of having to eat that much every day while I was away was insane. And to come back and be within 0.1 of a kilo of my weight, that's probably genuinely, all the other stuff that I've done, that's probably my biggest achievement.
Wow, that's phenomenal.
A bit left field, admittedly.
No, but that's an achievement in itself. Looking back, what advice would you give your 18-year-old self? And just to paint the picture, this is probably pre-pacemaker.
If I was looking to my 18-year-old self pre-pacemaker, accept that bad things will happen in life. And that's not, again, this is one of those things where people will it depends on what sort of person you are. You'll either look at that in a negative sense or a positive sense. Some people will look at that negatively, but I've discussed this with my psychologist several times. When you get given the gift of life, which is what this is, we're all here, we're all so lucky to be here. When you get given that gift, the one trade-off is, or the one price you have to pay, is that inevitably, unfortunately, bad things will happen. We're all going to lose loved ones. We're all going to have setbacks, and we're all going to have people we love taken away from us too soon or get sick. But if you can accept that now in this very moment and realize that, look, that's just something that the small price that we have to pay to get this great gift of life, it makes those things a hell of a lot easier to deal with and process when they come along. So I was at 18-year-old me, I was like, oh no, nothing bad happens. I'm too good for anything bad happen to me. I don't deserve, why do bad things happen to good people? I don't deserve this. If I had have mentally prepared myself that, look, setbacks will happen and that's okay, and they're going to come along, I think I would have dealt with the rough periods in those first few years after I got sick a lot better.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's some people will think that's morbid. I think it's quite an enlightening realization.
Who would be your dream dinner guest and why? And you can invite a few people if you want. You can make it a dinner party.
I would have loved to have met Jim Steins. I would absolutely have loved to have met Jim Steins. I just think what an amazing individual. Um, Tony Griffin is pretty cool to me. The bloke went and cycled across Canada and played GAA, and again, just took a bit of a different direction with his life. Very, very cool. And do you know who I'm fascinated by? I'm absolutely fascinated by Ronan O'Gara.
Okay. Yeah.
I just think he's so, like, I just love listening to his interviews.
Yeah, he's very good on off the ball. I really enjoy listening to him there.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoy listening to him. I just think some of the stuff he comes out with is just crazy. But yeah, probably Jim Steins was the first one that sprung to mind. If I didn't even have to think about him, he'd probably be number one.
Brilliant. Final question before I let you go, because I think we started chatting 2 hours ago, but if your life was a book, what chapter would this be called?
Acceptance.
Brilliant. Cormac, that was amazing. Very best of luck with everything going forward, with the trip that might potentially happen or might not, and I really appreciate your time.
Cheers, Arthur. Take it easy.
A massive thank you to Cormac for coming on to discuss his story. Again, if you were affected by anything discussed in the episode, please know that there are supports available and there are phone lines linked in the description box below. If you are enjoying the podcast, I'd really appreciate if you could leave a rating and a review, which is now available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Be sure to check out thesidelinelive.com for more content. Thanks as always for listening, and I'll catch you in the next one.